A great book with a bad ending is a book that readers are going to ignore or actively warn against. I'm Zara Hoffman, founder of Inimitable Books, and today I'm going to be talking about how to write an effective and satisfying ending that feels earned and is memorable. The kind that makes readers want to immediately recommend your book to all their friends. Here's what can go wrong. Endings will feel too neat, unrealistic, ambiguous, and frustrating, or they just simply go too fast. They might introduce new elements instead of resolving what is already within the story, or they can go off on a tangent. Maybe they solve problems through coincidence instead of character, action, and development. A satisfying ending doesn't mean it's a happy one. It means that the ending feels like it's been earned because it is the natural conclusion to your story. Your ending needs to resolve the central question you have established at the beginning of your story, and it is about keeping your promise to your reader. If you set up a romance, readers expect to see how that relationship comes together. If you wrote a mystery, you need to eventually reveal who did it. If your book is all about exploring a single character's internal struggle and not much external plot, that arc still needs to be completed. I'm specifically going to highlight our 3 thrillers coming out in 2026. Grandma's Little Secret sets up the question of whether the main character Emma is going to survive her serial killing grandma's attempts on her life. Mother Mercy, where you have a female serial killer that only hunts bad guys, but she is searching for answers about her past, and the end of the book answers whether or not she has gotten those questions answered. Thanks for watching, where you have a bunch of social media influencers invited to a private island and they start dying one by one. It is a thriller because it is through the points of view of those characters, wondering if they're going to survive, but also a mystery because readers eventually find out who did the killing. This still needs to be true for books that are in a series, and our next video is actually going to be all about how to and set that up from the end of book 1 going into book 2. But in general, you need your series books to lead naturally into the next installment without cheating your readers, and I will go into that in the later video. But keep in mind that this is not solely for standalone books, even though the 3 thrillers I just mentioned are all standalones. So to find out whether you have delivered on your promise of your book's premise, you probably need to know what your book's premise is, and if you haven't watched our video on how to write a logline, you should go back and check that out, because that is where I teach you how to write your book's high concept, which can then be used for pitching at conferences or writing your query letter. Both are topics that I go into much more detail in the course Query Ready, which is available through the Inimitable Writing community and will be linked in the description. Your ending needs to address your central question, even if the answer surprises readers, and not in a way that says, I never could have seen that coming, because you didn't build up to it properly. The climax is the highest moment of tension in your novel. It's the big reveal, it's the final battle, it's the crucial choice of your main character. The resolution shows the consequences of that climactic moment and is supposed to give readers closure. You need to give appropriate time to both of them. A climax without a resolution feels abrupt, but resolution without a strong climax feels anticlimactic. After your book's climax, readers need time to process what has happened up until that point. This doesn't need to be a long period of time, but you don't want to essentially say the end right after the big moment without any decompressing time for your reader, even if your characters are not done with the war that they might be fighting. Your protagonist's success or meaningful failure in the climax needs to feel earned, and that is what readers reflect on it during the resolution part of your book. Right before the climax and during the resolution, you don't want to be introducing things that suddenly make all the challenges easier. It's going to feel like deus ex machina, which, if you don't know what that means, it is basically saying you are reaching in to make things happen a certain way, and it does not arise naturally from your character's choices, which makes for a cheapened reading experience. You need to trace a line from the beginning to the end of your book. Can you see how your characters got to the end? If not, you have some revision ahead of you. Some of the most memorable stories are when a victory is earned, but isn't a complete victory. Something has been lost along the way. And this is not only true for when you need your characters to be battle-weary before going on to the next book in a series. The song Thank Goodness from Wicked, which is sung by Glinda at the start of Act 2, after many years have passed at the end of Act 1, there's a kind of a sort of cost. There's a couple of things get lost. There are bridges you cross you didn't know you crossed until you've crossed. And if that joy, that thrill, doesn't thrill like you think it will, still. Now, I'm going to stop talking about Wicked the musical, but you need to have your characters show wear and tear from their journey throughout the book. Otherwise, what's the point of their character arc? Choosing to give them a victory at all that isn't pristine makes it stay in readers' minds longer. And if that's the case, then maybe they will recommend your character has gotten what they needed, but maybe not what they wanted, or they realize that the two are different, which is something I talk about in the video on this channel about creating compelling characters. You also don't want to rush your readers in exploring that happiness with an asterisk before they close the book. You need to give them time to go through the resolution with your characters. But not every ending needs to be sad. It just needs to acknowledge that change has happened for your characters. Simply saying, and they lived happily ever after, might work in a fairy tale, but even in books that reimagine fairy tales, like our book Until the Last Page by Chantal Godory and its forthcoming sequel Beyond Ever After, does not pull that one-liner and goodbye, because it is not a experience that many people can resonate with. And you, even in all the fictional scenarios that you have been coming up with throughout your book, you want readers to be able to empathize with your characters and their experiences as much as your book's ending also needs to address the thematic question of your story, not just the plot threads that have been the vehicle through which you've explored that theme. If your theme is about finding identity, you need to show the protagonist's new self-understanding. You need to show the protagonist's new understanding of themselves. If it's about whether or not you can escape your past, then you need to show what the character has learned and what their ultimate answer is to that question. Both of these questions are wrestled with in the Adventures in Thimbleton duology by Veronica King. Down the Well wrestles with the first and the second, and the sequel handles the second. Down the Well was named a distinguished favorite in the young adult fiction category by the Independent Press Award, and the sequel just recently came out at the time of this filming. Please be sure to check out both books on our website and leave a review if you've already read one or both of them. Throughout the story, you want the external conflict, the internal conflict, and the theme to all be working together for a cohesive reading experience. So when you are doing the resolution for your book, you need to handle all three with grace and balance. Anywhere your character ends, whether it be physically or emotionally, needs to make sense from the events that have happened up until that point. I just talked about answering the thematic question in your ending, but your book doesn't need to answer every single question that has been raised through your story. Sometimes ambiguity is needed. You just need to make sure that the central questions to your story have been resolved in a satisfying way. You don't leave threads hanging from those main core elements to your story, but if you have some world building that hasn't been fully explored, you can hint at that. You can leave the door open to future adventures with your main characters or adventures of side characters. And I go more into this in the forthcoming Setting Up the Sequel video, but a lot of books in traditional publishing are signed as standalone with sequel potential, and authors who are submitting those books need to write an ending that is satisfying if a sequel were never picked up. But if a sequel is picked up, readers aren't left thinking there was no groundwork for this whatsoever. Your ending needs to leave readers thinking about what happened, but not wait, what just happened, because they're confused. One is a thought-provoking prompt that will hopefully lead to word of mouth and reviews. The second is frustration. You don't want to leave your readers feeling negatively towards your book. Some genres expect a more neatly tied up story, and that is mainly true for genre fiction, but not always. And literary fiction readers are much more likely to accept, if not even expect, an open-ended question at the end of a book. So make sure you are aware of your genre expectations and then be careful if you are choosing to ignore or bend them. I mentioned earlier how you don't want to practice deus ex machina in your book's ending. That means don't introduce new characters, new world building, new powers, new rules, or the ability to suddenly break a bunch of rules in order to make the story wrap up faster. It's going to make readers feel cheated and angry. You don't want to over-explain during your resolution. Yes, you should be reflecting on what has happened so that your readers have a moment to breathe after that climactic scene, but you don't want to treat them as unable to understand what they have been reading. There are certain genre expectations that need to be addressed. In a romance that is a standalone or in a series where each book is its own complete story, you need to have the characters end up together and be happy about it. That is what romance readers go to romance for. Anyone who says otherwise is talking about a romantic plot, not romance the genre. If you have a mystery and you never reveal who did it, readers are going to be mad because they were expecting to eventually find out from the author who did it, and then the best written mysteries allow readers to go back, reread, and pick up on clues that they maybe missed the first time or thought were inconsequential, and I talk about how to lay those a little bit in the plot twist video on this channel. To check if your ending is satisfying for readers, ask yourself these questions. Does it answer the main plot question? Does it answer the main theme question? Does it arise naturally from the actions of your characters throughout the whole book, but especially impacted by the climax and the resolution that happens after? Is either your climax or resolution rushed, or do they introduce things that were not present for the rest of the book and feel like a cheat? Are you over-explaining? Are you drawing out this ending when, yes, you don't want to slam the door in the face of your readers at the end of the climax, but you also don't want to have them stay too long where they feel like you should have ended it sooner. All in all, your story needs to be logical in its ending, in that it is the ultimate and only, and perhaps the only possible end for everything that came before. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next video in this playlist where I will be discussing how to set up a series or sequel in your book without ruining the first or prior book's ending. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next video in this playlist where I will be discussing how to set up a sequel at the end of a book without ruining the prior book's experience. In the comments, please let me know of a book whose ending you loved and a book whose ending you hated. But if you're going to go into spoilers, be sure to clearly mark that. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.